Well, hey everybody, and welcome to episode 24 of the Pixar Post Podcast. As usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And we're pretty excited about this episode. We feel like we've got some good news as well as additional insights that we're going to bring about that news as well. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the Oscar snub of Monsters University. We're not going to get into too much of that because obviously we had done, we mentioned that earlier or late last week, and we had put our lots of comments and feedback. So we're not going to dig into that too much, but we also had an interview this week with Dan Taylor, otherwise known as Dan the Pixar fan, and which I talked to him about the similarities between Toy Story 2 and 3, story similarities. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty cool when we broke them all down and kind of listed them out and everything, so hopefully you guys will enjoy that as well. But what we're going to kick off with today is talking about Toy Story That Time Forgot, the brand new Christmas special that last Friday hit us out of nowhere, that all of a sudden Pixar was like, we're going to have another special this year.
Another TV special.
Another TV special, yes. It's going to be another, we're assuming, 30-minute special. We're assuming. The only bad news about this is that we have to wait approximately 10 months to see it. That's a long time.
And can I say I called this?
Okay,
Did
go ahead.
Did I not say?
Go ahead. We'll give you 5 minutes. Go.
I was like, I think they're going to do another TV special. And yes, I was right. Well, I'm so excited.
So you were a little bit, you were certainly right. But obviously after this was announced, we had remembered an article that we had wrote or referenced back in October that mentioned, it was interviewing Jim Morris, who is Pixar's general manager. And he mentioned that if Toy Story of Terror, the first special that they did, was well received, they would likely produce additional television specials. And since Toy Story of Terror captured a ton of viewers and was replayed like crazy between ABC, ABC Family, and so on, I think it was Disney Channel as well.
Oh, gosh, all of them.
Like, that, it almost seemed like that was going to happen. So, between your prediction, between Jim Morris's comments, and then obviously with the announcement that happened, we're surprised. And I guess I'm more surprised at the timing that they did it. So
just
early.
Announcing it so early?
Yeah, so early.
You know what? I kind of think that's good because, it's going to be a slower year. Right. Granted, in like 2 months, not even 2 months, we get to see Party Central.
Which is going to be great.
With the Muppets.
Right.
And after that, we'll get to start hearing stuff for 2015. But to have something actually physically out that's Pixar related this year.
You're right. Yeah, because as we get later in the year, we're going to start hearing 2015 stuff.
Summertime, I think we're going to start hearing, sneak peeks of what's coming 2015, 2016. Inside Out. Well, not only Inside, I think for sure Inside Out, but I think we'll also start to hear more about Finding Dory.
Okay.
So I think we're going to start getting a lot of that.
Well, that's 2016. But you're going to hear The Good Dinosaur too.
Yeah, I just think that's going to start happening.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's fair to say. So the other things about the short that we already know is that it's going to be directed by Steve Purcell, who is the co-director of Brave.
So excited about this.
Yeah.
Because Brave is one of my favorite Pixar films.
Oh, we know. You mentioned it on every episode. Go ahead and say it. What else?
I really love Brave.
And what else?
I really like Mark Andrews, too.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
It's so surprising that you should say that.
But I can say I like Steve, too, because, he was a co-director,
Right. So who's it going to be produced by? Do you remember?
Yes. Galen Sussman.
Yes, and what did she produce?
Toy Story of Terror.
Okay, so we're going to be having familiar territory there for her. At least that's good that she's going to be doing another special.
Yeah. So that's going to be cool. Well, it's also good because I feel like, especially with Toy Story of Terror, just hitting, TV last, in October, she is ready to go. I think she knows what, how to get this 30-minute special out. I think she knows, what it takes. So I think that's a really good role for her to, reprise. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. And, So here's what we know from a story standpoint from here. So we know we know that it's going to be during a these are the official announcements. During a post-Christmas play date, the Toy Story gang find themselves in uncharted territory when the coolest set of action figures ever turn out to be dangerously delusional.
it's all up to Trixie the Triceratops if the gang hopes to return to Bonnie's room.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, there's a couple extra things that came along here. So first off, is there anything in there, like, obviously we hear, like, the coolest set of action figures ever. That's going to be pretty cool. And at this point, we really don't know much about those action figures.
I wonder whose action figures they are. Are they Bonnie's? Does Bonnie have action figures? Do you think like she would be gifted action figures?
Well, see, that's what I was wondering too. Is where did she get the action figures? Because it's post-Christmas play. Well, it's post-Christmas play date.
Okay,
so it's not most likely hers. It's most likely whoever she's playing with, and they have to get back to Bonnie's room. So okay, we just made that one on the fly. Yeah. Here we go. The other thing that we do know now is that Kevin McKidd, who is both the voice of Lord and young MacGuffin in Brave, will also be reprising his role. And what is
his Pixar voice?
His vocal role. Right. He's going to be playing Reptilis Maximus. So I don't know where this is going to come in.
Do you think that's an action figure? Or do you think that's going to be another like dinosaur lizard?
I feel like it's going to be dinosaur lizard kind of thing.
I do too.
So it's cool that it's going to be Trixie's main role. I think she's great with, her the vocal work of Kristen Schaal. Mm-hmm. Kristen Schaal, I think she's hilarious. I think she brings a lot of personality to Trixie. Obviously, she's a veteran when it comes to doing cartoon vocal work and comedy. So, I mean, because she's on, I think, Gravity Falls and does a couple other things. So. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be great. I just like that character as well. It's just a dinosaur toy down the street. It's just funny. So anyways, that'll be cool to see her. And I remember a couple other people were commenting online that essentially this means that, you can't say that Pixar has no female leads and or centric roles anymore, because we had Brave, and then we had Toy Story of Terror with Jessie being the main person, and this with, they're saying Trixie is essentially up to Trixie to get everything back to normal.
Well,
so they're definitely...
Then, Inside Out is going to be Riley.
Exactly. So there's lots to come from that. But there's something that came about that is what we think is actually really kind of like brain shattering, earth shattering. I mean, like, it blew our minds. Brain shattering. Mind blowing. And that was on the forum after this was announced. There was a user, Mac95, who he comments quite a bit, and he's got really great insights sometimes. And I think he had a pretty amazing find. Here's what he said. He said, I think that the title, Toy Story That Time Forgot, is a direct spoof or parody of the 70s film The Land That Time Forgot, which is about dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. So I took that immediately and I started researching. We've been talking about it. We started looking into it a little bit further because obviously if there's a possibility, of course we want to look into it and dig into it.
Of course.
So here's what we've come up with so far. The story, The Land That Time Forgot, is written by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Do you recognize that name and its connection to Pixar?
I do.
And how do you recognize that name?
It is the author of the John Carter books.
Yes.
That Andrew Stanton obviously went to direct John Carter for Disney.
Yes. So that right there...
That resonated with you because...
Oh my God, I flipped out. I was like...
Well, because Andrew Stanton was played a significant role in... Was it the timing of Toy Story of Terror, or was it just... breaking it down into the 3 acts?
It was breaking it down into 4 acts.
Oh, 4 acts, yes.
Right, where usually there's 3 for a Pixar movie. This is breaking it down into 4. So I was like, okay, Andrew Stanton played a role in the last special, just with the, helping them figure out story elements and that kind of stuff. And then the fact that Edgar Rice Burroughs, who also was involved, well, he wasn't personally involved, but just because he wrote the John Carter series, like you said, and then Andrew Stanton directed it, immediately I was like, like radar goes up. So I was like, okay, based on Mac 95's comment, I now feel, as soon as I saw that who wrote the book, because I didn't know off the top of my head, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, all right, I think it holds some weight. So
do you think Stanton is maybe writing this?
I would love it if that were the case. I would absolutely love it.
Co-writing?
I don't think he is. I think he's going to play an element in it again. Maybe he brought
share insight just because he's busy with Finding Dory?
Exactly. Yeah, that's just my thought. I mean, what do you think?
And I can see both ways. I can see him maybe having his hand in co-writing or writing, but also just like Toy Story of Terror, where he played a role, but not like a huge significant role. I mean, it was significant, obviously, breaking it down into 4 acts, but just not like a huge part.
I got you. Yep. Yeah, I think it'll be a very similar kind of scenario there. Okay, so the other thing that we did then is, of course, immediately download the book. I mean, because obviously the digital world that we live in, I didn't have to leave. I immediately was just like, bing, download.
Yeah.
And what is really cool is that we're going to kind of invite everybody else to download it and read along as well. And we have not finished it. I haven't finished it yet. And I'm in the middle of binge reading it right now. And I'll give you some initial story points and what I guess the Toy Story That Time Forgot connection will be.
Kind of maybe where the plot could be headed.
Yeah. So I want to discuss some of that. But yes, definitely download it. And the reason why I say download it too is that it's a great way to look at it because it's free. Mm-hmm. If you have a Kindle, it's free on the Kindle. If you have an iPad or just the iBookstore on your computer, it's actually free through Apple as well. It's because it's a lot of those classic older stories like that. They consider them like, okay, they're, more public domain at this point. Maybe the copyrights haven't been renewed for whatever reason, so they can release them, at no charge now. So certainly, if you like what I'm about to talk about some of the story elements, or if this feels like it's any of your kind of story, definitely read along. And then, once we do our next podcast, we're going to dig into it a little bit more and see if we can make even more connections based on what I only know from reading the first couple chapters. So, but I will have it completed before the next podcast. And the other thing is I'm going to have to really binge read because it's technically part of a 3-part series.
Yeah.
So there's The Land That Time Forgot, there's The People That Time Forgot, and I can't remember, it's something with the Odyssey, Abyss, something, I can't remember the third title off the top of my head right now, but, so it's a 3-part series. So I'm going to read all 3 as well, so that way I can ensure and see how deep the connection may be. Does it only involve just the first book or is it potentially going to seep into the second and third? And some of it, when I say will it have a connection, we may not be able to even know if it's going to have a connection until it comes out.
Oh, for sure.
But what we're going to do is have some fun with it and try to start digging out what it could be and how those kind of elements...
Or how we could see maybe the plot going.
Right. Just we're going to let our imaginations kind of fly. Mm-hmm. So here's a couple things. We obviously know that the story of The Land That Time Forgot involves dinosaurs. And we've heard that it's up to Trixie to make everything right to get back to Bonnie's room. So that's that right there. And
Dinosaur connection.
Now, this story is...
And obviously we know there's the new character, Reptilius Maximus.
Right.
Dinosaur/lizard.
Right. Sounds like it, right? Mm-hmm. So then the delusion...
And obviously Rex is there. Sorry.
Well, yeah. Throw that in. We got to hope he's there.
Yeah.
We don't. Well, actually, they said that he was one of the vocal cast. So yeah, he's going to be there as well. So then we have the delusional action figures, and where I think that's going to come into play is right off the bat. This story is almost a story within a story. So
the book that we're talking about.
Yes, The Land That Time Forgot is a story within a story. And what happens is there's a guy that is going to Greenland. He happens to go there and he finds kind of like a message in a bottle kind of thing. And it's this letter. And it's the story of, it's like almost like a handwritten thing of the accounts of what happened. Mm-hmm. And so he starts reading it. And as he starts reading it, essentially you just transition to the story of what that is. So it's a story within a story. Yep. Right. So... it's interesting how it immediately kicks right into the World War I time frame. It's kicking into U-boats, there's submarines, there's explosions, there's tugboats, there's a fight ensuing, there's some love that you already feel connecting. But see, they're fighting German soldiers in this. And that's what I think that the delusional action figures are going. So there's the connection to the action figures.
Okay, so the soldiers in the actual book you think are mirrored with the delusional action figures.
And I think that the dinosaurs in the book
are mirrored with Trixie, Rex, and Reptilius Maximus.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So that's where I think this whole thing, there's too many coincidences between dinosaurs in both stories, soldiers and action figures. And then we've got Edgar Rice Burroughs and the connection to Andrew Stanton, which is the connection to Pixar, which is the connection to John Carter. It's like, So I think Mac 95 has hit the nail on the head. Mm-hmm. And
definitely piqued your interest.
Oh my God. I was like, well, first off, it's another excuse for me to read another book that I haven't read, which is fantastic. I'm all over it.
Right.
But then once I started seeing all these connections, I'm like, man, that's going to be cool.
Now you're even more vested.
Yeah. So the only thing that makes me wonder about this is if I'm thinking about like soldiers, if I'm thinking about dinosaurs, how does this play into a Christmas special?
Well, I don't necessarily think that the short or the special, TV special, is going to be centered around the actual holiday. I think the beginning part of it's going to be like, oh, the end of Christmas, and we'll probably meet a new toy or two.
Right.
I can kind of maybe see that.
Yeah.
But, and see some holiday background, set design. But I think the story won't be. Just kind of like Toy Story of Terror wasn't centered around Halloween.
Right. It was just about terror and like, the nervous and scared elements of it, which tie into typically horror films and those kind of things, which come out at that time of year.
Right.
So I think it's going to be kind of like what you're saying, like where it's going to start out at Christmas. It's almost going to be like real fast at Christmas. Then we're going to go right to the post-Christmas play date with the new toys.
Mm-hmm. But I think the ending will have that feel-good Christmas, like Miracle on 34th Street ending.
Okay.
Where it's kind of like you feel good. Just kind of like Halloween, you want to get scared, but you want everything to end up okay.
Yeah, right.
You don't want anything bad to happen.
Right.
But you want to be scared, so I kind of think that's how Toy Story of Terror kind of played.
Right.
On Christmas, it's like, oh, okay, like, you want that feel-good, happy ending.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that that's how maybe the ending will be.
Sure.
Like, that's how they'll play with the Christmas holiday aspect of it.
Yep. All right, so we're interested to see what you guys think. Again, like we mentioned, we're going to talk about this on the next episode 25 of the Pixar Post Podcast. But in the meantime, download the book, start reading it, check out the forum post. You can find that just by going to pixarpost.com, clicking on forums, and then it'll be underneath the television specials section. Or, of course, you can always just go to the podcast tab, and it'll be in the show notes for episode 24 as well. But I think that there's something there, and I think we're going to have a fun time digging it apart and trying to see what we can come up with.
I know. I really can't wait for you to keep reading so you can keep telling me about it.
Right, because I was telling you about it last night, and I remember I was reading in bed, and I was like, I don't want to stop reading, because the beginning is really captivating with the explosions and the war elements of it, and how all of a sudden they're going to get to the this land that time forgot, and there's going to be dinosaurs there. Like, at this point, it doesn't seem like it's even going to get there, but obviously it does. So I'm really interested to see where it goes. So anyways, we'll talk more. So the next thing that we want to play is actually our interview that we had, again, like I mentioned, with Dan Taylor, aka Dan the Pixar fan again. And these are the story comparisons between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. And so there's, like we mentioned at the top of the show, there's some really great elements and pieces that tie those two movies together, that some of them you might have noticed right off the surface, but there's a couple of them that are a little bit below the surface that
there's a couple really good similarities that, watching one film you'd be like, oh yeah, and then watching Toy Story 2 you'd be like, oh yeah, and then watching Toy Story 3 you'd be like, hey, wait a second. But when you really dive deep into like how you guys were discussing this, it's like, wow, like it really does, they do mirror each other.
Right. Yeah, and we talk about all those reasons, talking about classic story structure. We talk about how it means no disrespect to either movie. We're not saying that one was copying each other just as like a money grab. So just definitely listen along, and then...
I think it's just really interesting points that you guys are bringing up.
Right.
As fan aspects, I think we all like to dig deep into all these interesting facts, and obviously we all love these Toy Story franchise films.
Right, yeah, of course.
But it is a really interesting discussion that you guys had about this.
Yeah. All right, well, listen in, and then we'll catch back up after this little interview with Dan Taylor. All right, so the next portion that we're going to talk about is from the forum, from the Pixar Post forum, and it was one of our readers, one of our friends of the site. It's Dan Taylor, Dan the Pixar fan. You may know his site. And he posted a really in-depth look at the similarities between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. And it was really thought-provoking and interesting. So we wanted to have him on. So welcome, everyone, Dan Taylor, to this segment of the Pixar Podcast. So say hello, Dan.
Hey, everybody. Honored to be here.
Yes. So like I said, you came up with a really cool comparison, and I know that Pixar follows the classical storytelling structure, so of course there's going to be some similarities from movie to movie to movie, but what I thought was really interesting is how you've called out some of the items that were really close, like, that really mirrored between Toy Story 2 and 3. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And then certainly, if people, after they listen to this, if they want to head back to the forum, we'll of course put a link in the show notes. You can link back to the forum, see the list again that Dan mentioned, and if you come up with any other similarities, we'd love to hear them as well. So certainly put those out there. All right, so the first one that I wanted to talk about, though, in fact, forget that. I don't even want to talk into the first one yet. How did you first come up with this? Like, how did you first start seeing and feeling the similarities and start writing them down? Did you write them down, or did you just really remember them all?
Well, the thing is, this was probably a year ago. I don't know what I was doing. I was just probably thinking about Toy Story and Pixar like I'm often doing. But I don't know. I was thinking about the stories, and it just kind of came to me like, hey, this is similar. Wait a second. This is similar. A lot of stuff is mirroring here. So then I wrote them down just so I'd remember them. Like I said, that was a long time ago. And then with your forum and, the interesting topics going up, that came back to me like, hey, this would be an interesting thing to post. I obviously didn't know it would make it onto the podcast or even be that intriguing to people. But, I threw it up there, and I don't know if I got everything that I initially wrote down because I couldn't find the original paper. So there could have been more on it, but I wrote down what I remembered. Or typed.
Holy cow, I don't know how there could be any more than what you have, because, between I don't even know how many you wrote, like there's like 10 or so, and then Rachel, one of the other readers, came up with one, and then purposefully, Julie and I went and watched Toy Story 2 and 3 today in prepping for this podcast, just so that way we watched a marathon back to back, so that way we would have them as fresh as we could in our minds. And we were taking notes throughout it, but I kept finding stuff that I'm like, no, that's not a close enough similarity, or I was like,
kind of a stretch.
Yeah, it was either a stretch or like it was already something that you had called out. So I'm like, if there's more, you need to find that piece of paper if there's more out there, because that's crazy. Because I think I came up with one more.
Are we going to talk about it now or later?
Well, let's talk about yours first. So the first one that you had come up with is really cool, because this one is a little more on the surface than some of the other ones you had. Like, I think a lot more people would go, oh yeah, I could come up with that one. But so it's the themed opening between Toy Story 2 and 3. Obviously, Toy Story 2 opens up with Buzz and that awesome space scene. Has one of my favorite it's my favorite intro to any Pixar movie, by the way.
Me too, actually.
Is it? Cool. Yeah. So then Toy Story 3 has the opening with Woody, where he's in a throwback scene where it's like Andy's mom recording them, and he's in that Western setting. So it's like they both had their own opening theme. So was that one just like easy as pie? You just came up with that one right away and just said like, hey, this one just makes sense?
Yeah, that was absolutely the first one I thought of, and that's why it's first on the list. And even I was just reading The Art of Toy Story 3, a few minutes before I started recording this with you, and even in that they mentioned that it was obviously done on purpose. So yeah, that was a given.
Yeah. So that one's a softball. That one, we'll throw that out there. It's kind of an easy one, but it gets people's minds thinking about the comparisons between the two films. It's one that everybody can easily relate to, because everybody can remember visually how awesome those intros were.
In fact, I think that's what started it, because I think I thought of that one first, and then that's what got my mind going initially anyway, so yeah.
Okay, good. So we're warming up the same way that you warmed up. So the next one that you had mentioned was Woody. About him, in the beginning of both Toy Story 2 and 3, he has attempts to save a toy or toys from Andy's front yard, and you mentioned for Toy Story 2 was with Wheezy. And then with Toy Story 2, Toy Story 2 was Wheezy, Toy Story 3 was the garbage bag, when the toys got thrown out when they were supposed to be in the attic.
Right.
So that's kind of cool, because I can honestly say some of the ones on your list I had said, yeah, I'd noticed those before. But I didn't notice that one, and it seems so easy.
Yeah, and I think that one was a new one. I don't think that was on my original list I think that came while I was writing this post.
Okay, all right. So what's the next one that you had on your list there then?
This one was, like the old kind of geezer character that appears nice on the outside at first and welcoming, and then turns into the villain.
Right. So with that one, you had
Lotso.
Yeah, exactly. So Toy Story 2, you had Stinky Pete. You got him. He's all loving and caring, and then you find out later that he's the guy that flipped on the remote, and even though Woody was blaming Jesse for it. And then with Lotso, the thing that's interesting with this one is with Lotso, you find out that he's an evil character, a villain-ish character, a lot earlier than you do with Stinky Pete. Stinky Pete, it's almost all the way at the end.
Exactly, and in fact, I was just going to make that same exact point that Lotso was revealed as the villain, very, very near the beginning of the movie. As in with Stinky Pete, it's more of a twist at the end.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, and that part I thought was really cool. That it did last as long as it did, because when that happened, I remember watching that. I was like, I would have never thought.
Right. So yeah, I did notice that too. That he was set up very early on to be the main villain for the rest of the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. So then the other one that the next one that you had mentioned is that in both films, and I thought this was really cool. Julie had a comment on this one as well, where she had mentioned you had said that in both films a Buzz. They have a Buzz that goes back to his deluded Space Ranger self. So in Toy Story 2, you have the utility belt Buzz, and in Toy Story 3, he kind of gets delusional again by going into demo mode. When I told Julie that one, and we were discussing these ahead of time, she said, but in the second one, Buzz doesn't get delusional. It's another Buzz. And I said, you missed a word in Dan's post. He said both films have a Buzz.
I thought of the same thing, so I had to go back and change it.
Yeah.
I wrote it initially, and I said Buzz, and then I kind of backspace. I'm like, wait a second, I got to rethink this a little bit.
Right.
That's funny.
So that was because I didn't think of it. I just went with it right away. But then she was the one that came back and said, no. It was really the other Buzz that was delusional again. That was the Space Ranger.
And that's another thing that's a little bit on the surface, because even if you go back and you watch maybe like the commentary, that the filmmakers of the filmmaking team needed that deluded Buzz back in Toy Story 2 and in 3, because that's what made him so likable and funny in the first one, that they needed a way to bring that humor back.
All right, so the next one that you had mentioned was that Woody in both films gets stolen, brought to a place where he meets new friends and learns valuable information. So you've got in Toy Story 2, where he's in Al's office, where he meets the new friends being, Jessie, Bullseye, and Stinky Pete. And then you've got Woody in Bonnie's room when you meet all her toys with Mr. Pricklepants and so on and so forth. So that one, for some reason, I didn't get either, that he was stolen and brought to a place where he meets new friends. I thought that was really cool. Do you remember how you thought of that one, or was that just kind of like it just came when you were thinking of all the rest?
Well, looking at this now, I need to make a change to Al's apartment, because his office is at Al's Toy Barn. So anyway.
There you go. You're right. It is. It's actually his apartment. You're right.
So yeah, change. I'll edit that. But this is something that I remember was on my original list. Only I knew that Woody got separated and went off and had his own adventure. But when I was typing this up, I'm like, wait a second. Technically, I mean, obviously, Al steals him. That's very apparent. But I'm like, technically, Bonnie steals him too. She takes him, without permission. So she steals him. And I thought of that on the spot. I'm like, he gets stolen by both, technically. But with Al, it's definitely more apparent that he's actually stealing him. And with Bonnie, she's so cute, I guess, that you don't think of it like that. But
no, you don't. Well, and she didn't, like, with Al, he breaks open that little money, the safe that his mom puts him in. It's a little bit more, but yeah, she does. She just stumbles across him, and instead of like taking it inside to the daycare and saying, like, Mom, I found this outside, she just is like, yeah, I got this.
Yeah, she takes it. So that was something that was just a little extra detail that I kind of added in there. But yeah, with in Al's apartment, yeah, he finds out that he's a collectible, and that feeds the plot for the rest of the movie. And then at Bonnie's house, he finds out about Lotso from Chuckles and And, that feeds the rest of the story as well for him to get back into Sunnyside and get the rest of the toys out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, since that one kind of goes along with the observation that that Julie and I had come up with, I'm going to go into that one now. So our observation was that in both movies, the characters all want to stay safe in Andy's room. But once they're in their new environment, someone doesn't want to go back to Andy's room.
That's true.
So for instance, in Toy Story 2, Woody decides after he learns all about and has more conversations with Jessie and Stinky Pete about him and the whole the Japanese museum, he doesn't want to go back when he's in Al's apartment. And then in Toy Story 3, what's ironic is that Woody is the only one that wants to go back to Andy's room once they're at Sunnyside. So it's almost like he learned his lesson in Toy Story 2, and he realizes that he needs to stay in Andy's place, and now the rest of the gang in Toy Story 3 needs to learn their lesson, and at the end, of course, Mr. Potato Head comes and says, remember all that bad stuff I said about Andy's apartment, or Andy's attic? I take it all back.
Right.
So that was our observation that we had saw, that I guess it's not really the same between both of them, but it both had that element of once they're away from Andy's, somebody doesn't want to go back to Andy's.
Well, you kind of triggered another thought for me, which is along the same lines, but they both have, with Woody in Al's apartment, he doesn't want to go back, but when, Stinky Pete turns on them, it's very apparent that he needs to get out of there. And the toys, Jessie and the gang, they don't want to go away from Sunnyside because they think it's a nice environment, like you're saying. But when Lotso turns, they need to get out of there. So it's very similar in that way too.
Right. So that's a little bit of like a continuation of the one that we had thought of. So that's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Hadn't thought about that. So you kind of, it's similar, same type of thing. But
yeah, same. Yeah, it's along the same vein. But so that was ours. So does that meet up? Does that meet up to the Dan level of standards of the rest of your list?
Absolutely. No, that makes it to the list. You should add it right there.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So your next one that you would come up with is that there's a flashback in both of the movies, and there's a flashback to some sort of traumatic event. So explain those.
So we got Jessie's abandonment, ultimately, her owner growing up and leaving her on the curb. Traumatic in itself for a toy. And then you have Lotso's event was a little different, but still along the same lines, where he was lost. He wasn't necessarily outgrown, but he was replaced, which, scarred him obviously for the rest of his life. Jessie handled it, didn't make her go evil or crazy. She handled it obviously a little bit better, but Lotso, it affected him for the rest of his life and kind of made him into the person or the toy that he was for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting is that if you look at it, Jessie really should have been the one that was more jaded with the whole event because she was legitimately dropped off, whereas Lotso was just...
Yeah, you're right.
Where Lotso was just forgotten, and therefore the girl never wanted to not have a Lotso, so that's why she got another one. But then later in the film, he keeps talking about that she left him, and then like everybody keeps reminding him, no, she didn't leave you, she lost you, and
she still loved him. That's why she got another one. But to her, having another one, she doesn't realize, that these toys are alive. So for her, it was just, having the same bear again,
Right. So if it should have been somebody that was more jaded, it should have been Jessie. But yeah, like you said, she's the one that, at least handled it better.
Right.
The next one going along, which it just keeps, I don't know, it's to me like that last one was good, but it just keeps getting better as the list goes on too. So both films have a villain who gets what they deserve by getting an unlikely new owner who puts them in an uncomfortable setting with other toys like Stinky Pete in the backpack with Barbie and Lotso tied to the front of the truck with the other stuffed animals that are on there and other critters that are on there. And I had to laugh at that because, again, I have no idea why I didn't think of that because it's so obvious. You see you see Stinky Pete get put in that backpack, and you see Barbie turn her head, and she's got all the crazy makeup and the braided hair, and the music cues like bong, it's like right there. So I don't know how.
For him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't understand how I didn't see it with Lotso when he gets strapped on the front of the garbage truck.
Yeah, they're both. That's a good word. They're both strapped basically to their fate.
Ooh, strapped to their. Oh man. Okay, I'm sitting back in my chair because that one just blew me back. That was good.
Yeah, and that was another one that was more. I think that was probably in my initial list. I think that was probably one of the first 2 or 3 on the list. I thought that was kind of one of the more obvious ones, but it's interesting to hear other people's perspectives on kind of what stood out to them and what didn't necessarily stick out to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's because everybody's interpreting them a different way. That's why people leave movies, and some people say, yeah, it was great, and other people are like, yeah, it's okay.
Exactly.
So, all right, so then the toys in both films are trying to get home to Andy and make it just in time. It is true, they're always, and I guess you could almost say with Toy Story 1, it's almost similar to that too.
One, yeah.
Because they're trying to get to Andy before he moves to his new house. So in the second one, he's coming home from cowboy camp, and they need to be back there to be, home, or he's going to be like, where the heck are all my toys? And then Andy has to leave for college in the third one, but they got to make sure that they're in that box that Woody has to,
or else again, where the heck are all my toys?
yeah. Well, he already thought they were in the trash, though.
Oh, that's true. That was, you're right.
So why, he should have wigged out when he saw those. He should have been like, how the heck are they back?
That's true. I never actually thought of that.
And
maybe he thought his mom brought him back down and was encouraging him to donate them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And
that's
the other
crazy.
thing,
I didn't think about that.
the other, and this is kind of off topic of what we're talking about, but one thing that Julie mentioned as well that was really interesting in Toy Story 2 is there's never any question from Andy's mom or Andy or anybody where Jesse, Bullseye, where they came from.
I thought the same thing before, because obviously Andy doesn't know, but assumes his mom. But once he says, off camera, you never see this. Once he says, "Mom, thanks for these toys," what did she say, right?
Yeah, like, kid, you're crazy. I didn't give you those.
They just showed up in your room. Someone came into our house and just put them on your bed.
Right. And who took the time to write "Welcome Back, Andy" on the Etch-a-Sketch?
They should make a short to see what happens, off camera with all that stuff. This is great.
That would be a pretty intense short. That's called the deep cuts. Andy and Mom
they cut
fighting.
That way back in the cutting room.
You're right. So do you remember that one as far as when you came up with that one, with them both trying to get home, or in all of them trying to get home just in time for something?
Yeah, that one definitely fell under, the specific pattern for each one. And even, I guess you can even say that the shorts as well. Well, not so much. I was going to say Toy Story of Terror had a similar thing where they had to, reach out to their owner before, they left. So that had a similar type thing going on. The other shorts, not so much. But
right.
Yeah, I just noticed that was very, always very apparent in the Toy Story film that they're always trying to get back to their owner just in time, and they always make it just in time.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of a given for me as well.
Okay. So then one of the other ones that I'll mention, and this one's actually from Rachel, another user on the forum. She had, and as we're talking about getting places, this is what reminded me of this one. She had mentioned that the Pizza Planet truck plays a more important and somewhat crucial role in all 3 Toy Stories.
Yeah, I noticed that post. That was a really good insight.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that, in the first Toy Story, they ride in the Pizza Planet truck to find Andy and Sid at Pizza Planet. And then in the second one, they ride to the airport to save Woody and Jesse.
Right.
And then in the third one, that is actually the vehicle of how Lotso, Big Baby, and Chuckles found Sunnyside in the first place.
Which is very brief. A couple frames.
That's more like it's more like an Easter egg, but it's significant because that's how the pyramid structure of Lotso being on top. That's how the whole thing started. Was
right.
They fell off that truck because of a bump in the road or whatever. I think that was a bump in the road that kicked them off the bumper.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and what else I thought that was really cool that Rachel said is that with most other Pixar movies, the Pizza Planet truck is just a cameo, but in all those, it's actually a piece of the story.
Yeah, I agree completely.
That part, when I read that, I was like, okay, that's dang good.
Good job, Rachel.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
job.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So then let's see, back to some of the ones that you were mentioning.
Oh, the next one was to me this is a connection between both. In my mind, is that the climax for both films takes place in such a large scale, intense environment. In the second one, it was the airport, which is for a toy, that's a very big environment, and the second one was the Tri-County dump, which is also a very big and significant environment for them to be in. So I thought that, to me, that's a connection between both as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was too, and I think that it is an interesting one. I will say that scene where they first go in Toy Story 2, where they first go in and they see the baggage handling area, I laugh at that every time. It's so hilarious. And again, like I talk about on the podcast sometimes, I don't like a lot of that, kind of like potty humor kind of thing. But
with Mr. Potato Head.
But I was laughing so hard I had tears when I saw that in the theaters in '99. I was cracking up. I was like, okay, that's good. And it's almost like along the same lines in Toy Story of Terror, when you see Jesse go in Mr. Jones's mouth and the
Pez.
Yeah, the Pez cat, it pukes out the Pez. I mean, it's like it's the same thing, but for some reason it works. And I don't know if it's just because
genius.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just because it's Pixar and I can accept it then or what, but I love it. So.
Yeah, I thought the same exact thing. That's whoever was, around the story table for that one, at the brainstorming sessions, they get street cred for those ones.
Right. Yeah, and obviously they're big, exciting environments like you mentioned, because obviously within Toy Story 2, the Tri-County dump, that's the scene that obviously kicks off everybody's, waterworks in the theater once they see Toy Story 3. So I mean, that's right. It's large scale, it's exciting, there's a lot going on there. So
if you notice, there isn't as many similarities between the second and third and the first one, because in the first one, it isn't necessarily like a large scale environment. They are out on the streets, right? But it's not to the same effect as the second and third have in common,
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I did think of, but I didn't write it on it. But I guess I'm bringing it up anyways. I didn't write it down though, is because in the first one, Buzz and Woody are riding RC, which is something fast to get there. And then it ends up being in Toy Story 2 where Buzz and Woody are both on Bullseye trying to get Jessie down finally.
That's true. No, that's a really good one.
So they're going fast, like it's something that they're chasing something and they're both on, either RC or Bullseye, and they're back to back. Buzz is in the front, Woody's in the back, and then they're trying to reach something else. Right.
Yeah, and in Toy Story 2, it's Buzz on Bullseye trying to reach Jessie and Woody hanging off a plane.
Right, and then Woody...
Very similar.
Doesn't Woody get there first, and then is Jessie the second one? I can't remember now.
I'm thinking... No, they go at the same time.
Oh, that's right, because they swing on Woody's, the little plastic ring on his pole on the back that does his voice. Okay, you're right. Yep. So your last one that you had mentioned is this is an all three films one, so this is a good way to kind of end the list, and I'm sure you probably put it there for that reason, because I give you that credit. Right. In all three films, there's a moment when the toys in Andy's room doubt Woody about whether he's telling the truth, and I have always known that one, and that one has always I remember feeling that one every time, and I'm like, okay, can't these clowns figure it out that they should trust Woody by now?
Me too. I've had this. That's exactly this one. This one I could have a lot to say about, because very similar thing. I've always thought that, especially in the third one, after they've seen him telling the truth in Toy Story 1 after doubting him, and obviously lost some trust there. But in the second one, they didn't believe him about being a collector's item, and they thought he was kind of like off his rocker for that. And then in the third one, they doubt him. At the whole beginning, with they think he's lying about the fact that Andy threw him out or didn't throw him out.
Right. Well, and then they also don't trust him, frankly. I mean, I guess it's there because they feel strongly about it, but they also don't trust him that going back to Andy's is the right decision, because they think that, staying at Sunnyside is the better option.
That's true. No,
that's not as much mistrust as it is just their opinion of it. But still, they don't believe him. He's like, no, we've got to go. And they're like, sorry.
Maybe it's because he lost just so much trust when he knocks Buzz out the window that they are still scarred by that 10 years later. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess that was a really bad decision on Woody's part. It's taken him a long time to get back some of that toy trust back. Can you think of another one in Toy Story 2 where they doubt him besides the fact that they don't really kind of believe him at first about him, his fame? I think that was the one I was thinking of, if that's what you were thinking of as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any more that I can think of that they really doubt him, because I know, where Buzz is talking about it, where they go kick off and go in the search for Woody, is when they, mention that they threw him out of the truck, the moving van, and then Mr. Potato Head says, "Oh, you had to bring that up again."
Right.
So obviously there's trust there before that. Because even Mr. Potato Head's admitting it. So yeah, I think it just has to be that, but I'm sure there could be something else. But if somebody else thinks of it, go out and throw it on the forum, or if we think of it, we'll put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't wait to hear some more, if there are any.
Yeah, absolutely. So
great.
for everybody listening, Dan and I have been talking for a while before we even started recording this about, just everything Pixar. And so there's a lot that, we've discussed in forum and all those kind of things. So yes, we're definitely excited to see if people pick up on this one, if there's anything else that they can think of. I will say it'll probably be hard because, like I said, we really only came up with the one, because you would come up with Yeah, well, they're all good, but I mean, you came up with a pretty comprehensive list there, and I got to give it to Rachel for her one on the Pizza Planet truck as well, because that was a cool connection, that it's a piece of the story in this, more so than just a prop or an Easter egg.
Yeah, so. And one other thing, of course, just so we know that, I not discrediting the second and third one in any way, they're fantastic. I'm not saying that the third one copied the second one, but I definitely saw some apparent similarities that were there, but I still feel the stories on both of them are great, and I think that they use a similar structure because it worked so well in Toy Story 2, and it worked for them in Toy Story 3. So
that is a good thing to note, because I did mean to mention that at the top of our discussion here as well, is because, yeah, there's definitely no disrespect between the two. I would argue that a lot of people think 3 is better than 2. I mean, obviously 2 is my favorite Pixar movie, but I think a lot of people did enjoy 3, if not the same, more than 2 as well. So I think that There's certainly no disrespect to what Pixar was doing. Like I mentioned, they follow, and I've heard this from Pixarians, that they say that they follow the classical storytelling structure, and more than 90% of movies that you see in the theaters follow the traditional classic storytelling structure. So some of those things, exactly, it works. So that's why you do it. But, it has its 3 acts, and it has, a villain that's revealed, and it has all these other kind of things. So I feel like some of those could have come across just because they were. But like you mentioned, there was one that was planned, which was the intro, where it was, Buzz's theme, and then it was, with Woody's in the third one. So, certainly no disrespect. I'm glad you brought that up, because I did mean to say that at the top of the discussion as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no, and it's true. And I was just in my screenwriting class here at school, and she kept on referencing, Pixar and their story structure and their classical structure, and Finding Nemo. She kept on using Finding Nemo as the example of classical structure. So they really do have it down. They know what they're doing, and it's what has made them hugely successful. So props to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Dan, for coming on the Pixar podcast and for discussing this great topic that you kind of spent your time over years in coming up with and writing down. And obviously anything else comes up, be sure to let us know if you have any more of those great in-depth things. So thanks again for coming on, Dan.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been fun.
Absolutely. All right, so that was the interview with Dan, the Pixar fan. And I should also mention, we didn't say it during the interview, that if you want to check out Dan's site, he has he posts daily posts. He posts daily posts of his personal Pixar collection. So different toys that he has, different things along those lines. And his site is pixarfandan.blogspot.com. So feel free to check that out as well.
Yeah, he's got some really neat Pixar collectibles.
Yeah, he's got some really rare stuff too, as far as like we talked about the Bugs Life, like a Bugs Life playset from back in '98 or whatever. Yeah, he's got some of the old school, really cool toy sets and things. Obviously, we all have our own individual pieces and collections and angles that we've collected. So I'm sure even people listening have certain things that they have, but they want something else. And so it's kind of cool just to see someone else's collection. He doesn't do really long, involved posts. So if you just want a site to take a look at, and
yeah, it's really cool. Or just, to say, hey, what's out there? What do I need to be checking eBay for?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so the final thing we wanted to talk about today was the Oscar snub of Monsters University. And again, I don't want to dig into it too much since we've already talked about the awards ad nauseum in our previous podcasts and in posts that we've had. But we want to stress how we truly felt about Pixar not being nominated, and just to at least felt like we had to address it. Mm-hmm. So what were your initial thoughts when you heard that it wasn't going to be nominated? Or that it wasn't.
Yeah, that it wasn't nominated. I was actually pretty shocked. We feel like that Frozen will take, Oscar home.
Right.
It's been critically acclaimed. People are loving Frozen. Mm-hmm. We enjoyed Frozen too, but I feel like the lack of nomination for the Monsters University team, and I'm not knocking any of the other films that were nominated by any means, because those teams and those animation studios worked so hard and they deserve the nomination. I just feel like Monsters University we talk about the technical aspects all the time, but I feel like not just technical, but the story, the animation, revisiting these characters again, I just think was such a new, clever, fresh way.
Yeah.
There was nothing that I didn't like about Monsters University. Right. Obviously, we're going to be biased because we run, obviously, a Pixar website. But really, I'm just shocked that the nomination wasn't there for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess kind of mirroring that, there was a comment that on our post that we wrote up about it, that our reader, Lucas, mentioned that he thought we might have been a little bit harsh in our write-up. And so I reread the post and I responded to him and I said, you know what, you're right, because there's a couple elements in there where it could have come across that way. For instance, when the nominations were being announced and we were watching the stream live, I had mentioned that once I saw that Ernest and Celestine was nominated, I assumed that Monsters University would also get nominated, right? And so he said, hey, have you even seen Ernest and Celestine? And, he wasn't disrespectful about it. He was just trying to be realistic about it. And I love that kind of, back and forth
definitely.
Discussion. So I said, you know what? Based on how I wrote that, you could have interpreted that way. So I kind of went back and said, hey, I completely understand why, you mentioned that. I said, let me clarify. When I mentioned that Ernest and Celestine was nominated and then I assumed that Monsters University would be nominated, it wasn't because I thought Ernest and Celestine would be a poor movie or is a poor movie by any means. In fact, I haven't seen it and we want to see it because a lot of people have said how much heart is in that movie, and it's based on other books that have been released before. So it was more along the lines of typically, this year is a total atypical year for Pixar and nominations, but typically, especially at the Oscars, when the little guys or the smaller studios is what I mean when I say little guys get nominated, typically the big guys and or Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, those films also get nominated. Mm-hmm. And since the other big guys were nominated, I was surprised that Monsters U wasn't. So that's what I was meaning when I said that. So I'm glad that he, pointed that out. And then we went back and forth and had a great conversation.
A really good, discussion about that.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I love those kind of comments. So, certainly if you're reading anything and you feel like we've been a little harsh, or even if you just want to throw in your own comments, of course, that's what it's there for. So certainly do so. But another reader had mentioned that Pixar was nominated 9 times over the past, for the past years
since 2001.
There was a couple years where they weren't nominated because they didn't have a film out, mm-hmm. and they won 7 of those times. And I guess, I hear what he's saying. He was saying, like, it's been nominated that many times, give the other studios a chance, or maybe that's why the Academy didn't nominate Pixar, mm-hmm. because they wanted to give other studios a chance. And I guess I can't really say anything bad about the comment, but it makes me think, and I just say, it doesn't matter about how many times you've been nominated or won. It's really about excellence in filmmaking.
Well, it definitely isn't about how many times you've been nominated, because Meryl Streep's been nominated 19 times.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I think it doesn't matter about nominations. It matters about excellence in filmmaking for the year that the Oscars are encompassing. Mm-hmm. And that's all I think that this should be compared against. Exactly. It shouldn't be compared against what has happened in the past. It needs to be, here's the set of films that were released this year, and here's the films that were nominated, and here's what's going to win this year. So I just think that the whole thing is, like you were talking about the teams, like we said as well, we think Frozen truly is going to win this year. Mm-hmm. But I still think that Monsters U deserve to be in the group, like we have mentioned before with the Golden Globes, and the uplifting spirit that gives to the team is the most important.
Boosting.
The morale boost is, and the party that's going to ensue for all those people that spent all those years and hard work and long hours. So
it's almost like a validation.
Yeah, it feels good. I mean, whether it means anything, whether it, we talk about it all the time, we've said it a bunch, Pixar doesn't make films to get nominated, Pixar doesn't make films to win an award. But it still feels good.
Yeah, and we have been seeing comments and getting comments and emails of people saying, Monsters University, was good, but was it as good as Monsters Inc. or Up or Ratatouille? And we're not comparing that, but I also want to say, yeah, I think it is as good.
Well, right, yeah, and we said that as our opinion, and that's obviously everybody's individual opinion. So that's cool. I mean, that's everybody's opinion, and everybody's entitled to it fully. But I think it's kind of like, you put on an outfit. Let's just say that you make your own clothes, just as an example. Mm-hmm. And you have made some clothes in the past, so that's why I'm choosing this just looking at you. But anybody out there, you make something, you put it on, you go out in public. It feels, you're not expecting anybody to necessarily say, wow, that's amazing, or great job, but it feels good if you hear it. And that's, to me, and then the rest of your day, you might perk up a little bit more and you stand a little taller, your shoulders straighten up, whatever it may be. And I don't think that their shoulders are going to be down by not getting nominated. I don't feel like they're going to be punched in the gut because they didn't get nominated. But I think it just feels good. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that the Academy...
But that's where it gets a little, not like political per se, but they can't nominate everybody.
No, and that's what I'm saying again is I don't think that the Academy owed that to them because they're Pixar or because of the work that they did. But I think if you're looking at, like we talked about before, the ratings from critics, from end users that are watching the movie, from box office take, if you're looking at all of those things in comparison, that's where I feel like...
Why was MU...
Not included.
Right.
Not
and
included.
It was in the top 3.
So we loved it. We thought it couldn't be any better from the technical elements, from the story elements. We loved
concrete.
The concrete, as Julie always mentions, the vocal cast, everything. We loved every moment of it. So whether it's nominated or not by an official Academy, it was nominated and it won for us.
It did. I mean, we just had our baby shower and it was Monsters University themed.
Exactly. So we loved every minute of it. So anyways, well, that is episode 24 of the Pixar Post Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the discussions about Toy Story That Time Forgot, the comparison of Toy Story 2 and 3, and then also a little bit of discussion about Monsters University. We're going to use the upcoming, again, episode 25 is we're going to discuss Toy Story That Time Forgot in the comparison to Edgar Rice Burroughs' book, The Land That Time Forgot. So certainly, like I mentioned at the middle of the podcast, be sure to grab that book and download it if you want to kind of listen along to our thoughts and feedback on it. And be sure to put your comments in that post on the forum because we're going to be discussing some comments from there as well.
Yeah, I really can't wait for that. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. All right, so signing off as usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And be sure to stay tuned to PixarPost.com all week for the latest Pixar news.